Testing one, testing two. Buckle my boot, buckle my shoe. Love it. Go ahead, Alan.
This is Master Alan Venable of the Saber Martial Arts Podcast, looking at a Saber Martial Arts Holo-Education outreach program thing here.
My favorite part was a thing here.
Yeah.
And with a thing here, welcome to SMAFcast. This will be episode, I believe, 28. And if you haven't caught up, go out now, hit pause, and go to YouTube, go to Apple Podcasts, go to Spotify, go to Stitcher, go to Podbean. I don't care. Go to your mom's house and get her laptop and listen to SMAFcast episode 27, wherein we took a look at Alan's Phoenix Saber Academy curriculum. Or I should say snippets from Alan's Phoenix Saber Academy curriculum, because truly just snippets. But you get a whole lot more than snippets in analysis and commentary on the content. So it's kind of nice to hear from the person who generated the system themselves, and also from some mook who's just watching, aka myself, and to just kind of get a little scope into maybe some similarities with your own Saber training. Maybe if you've never trained before, this would be a nice way to dip your toe into the pool. And so anyway, there's a companion playlist with that. So go check that out. And either way, that companion playlist is unlisted on YouTube. So the only way to watch that content right now is to go ahead and listen to the podcast. It's in the show description, a link to that playlist. And I really had fun with that episode. So tonight, that's kind of what we're doing.
I had fun too.
Yeah.
That was really, really cool.
And Alan,
look forward to this.
Yeah, me too, because one particular reason, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this before we start this episode, is really quickly, what was it like to get, I know you've done this before because you've been a teacher for a long time, but what was it like to get your stuff sort of analyzed or I didn't really pick it apart, but picked apart, for better terminology, by somebody who had never done it before with you, had never done your system before, didn't even really know much about it other than sort of the little bits of conversation we've had over the years?
Well, with everything, you have to take all criticism and kind of go back and look at it from every point of view. It's not necessarily healthy to just be like, oh, well, that guy thought my stuff was crap, he's wrong.
Yeah, right.
That is an incorrect way of processing criticism. You listen to it, and then you do just like if somebody throws a punch. You know, what you have trained is what's going to show up. You know, you're going to go and say, okay, well, there are some things that I really liked, and there are some things that I really didn't like, and you have to stop. Like, if you were to be a professional athlete and you watch your videos, you're not going to be like, oh, well, obviously whatever my coach said was wrong, that I did wrong, because I still did it. No, they're trying to help you, trying to make you grow as a person and grow as a, as an athlete. So all kinds of criticism for me is good, because that.
And I wasn't even really critical. I don't think I criticized the thing, but your point is still made.
Yeah, it's meant to be
critical thought, critical eye.
It's meant to be like, okay, well, this is a thing, and this is my interpretation of it. What do you think?
Yeah.
And if there is, and here's my caveat to that. If you don't have further credentials, right? Like, you're not really, and this is for all things. Like, you can have an opinion about art. You can have an opinion about, movies and TV shows and however you want. That's all. That's your interpretation of art. You can hate it or you can love it. You can, go anywhere in between. So that's kind of how I see martial arts, especially when it's presented.
Mm-hmm.
It's like your opinion is valid because that's your opinion. It's when somebody starts to make it like a personal thing or try to make it like, well, that's not gonna ever work. It's like, well,
Right.
in this particular case, it will.
And I've been
But
accused of that myself. Sorry to interject, but I do feel it's important, just really quickly, to say I've been that guy. This won't work.
yeah,
This is BS.
yeah,
I've been that guy, and I will be that guy again, I'm sure. Um, but again, your point is well made that it's maybe not the healthiest.
right. Yeah, it's not healthy to for either person, right? For the person being criticized and the critic. Both again, opinions are valid when it comes to art because it's an opinion, but when it becomes something where one person tries to be more righteous than the other, or when one person becomes more, I'm right because of X, Y, Z.
Right.
It's like, great, man, that's your opinion, and you're valid, and that's awesome. However, that's not what I'm talking about. That's
Mm-hmm.
not what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of times, stuff like that, you do have to take as a grain of salt. The fact that somebody's willing to put their art out there, first of all, is braver than any other thing that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
To because they know it's going to be ripped apart. They know it's going to be, you know, uh,
It's very vulnerable.
criticized.
I'm glad you
Yeah,
said that. It's
but
very vulnerable, and it's important for me to remember, because when I am that guy who's either tearing stuff apart or maybe getting torn apart, it's just really important to remember that doing that in the first place took a large sack of toys, so to speak, and
right
you know
now
that's worth its
we
weight.
right now you and I are both professional martial arts instructors. So when we look at something and we call bullshido, right,
Mm-hmm.
our
Yeah.
fun little thing where it's just like, no, that is just messed up because because we actually see that people would get hurt if they try to
Right.
practice that.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
not because we like that person personally or not. It's just like, no, you're across the room cheese strike is not going to work. And
Right.
obviously it's not going to work because look at this guy that just showed up at one of your events
Well, let
watching
me
you and
just
he just
let me
walked
just
up to you.
unpack 30 plus years of martial arts
Yeah,
practice out and just
right.
give you a few ideas why it might, and you're still welcome to refute that. That's the thing. Like,
Yeah.
for you and me, I think the conversation is the allure. Like, I don't think you
Hmm.
or I are the type of martial artists that want other martial arts to suck. Right?
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
I want everybody's martial art to be awesome because that means I get to learn it.
Yeah.
And so for me, like, I don't want anybody's stuff to suck. So
Right.
when there is a critical thing happening, I do like to try and look at it from all angles, maybe try and glean something useful from something that is bullshito. But um, you know, like you said, the vulnerability is boy, it's both ways too. Because I know
Hmm.
I've had to put my foot in my mouth a few times when being critical, because
Right.
there's a vulnerability to that too. Because what if you actually are wrong, which has happened? It happens all the time, right? And so my foot ends up in my mouth, and I go, you know what? I just learned something. And the good thing to do is to go to that martial artist that you learned that you maybe criticized before and say, you know what? You were right. I was wrong. Oh, how cool is that? How much do other martial artists like that too? Like,
Well, that just shows an amount of integrity,
mm-hmm.
right? And a lot of this stuff, this is where we're talking about being critical. And the thing is, like, if you understand what kind of training somebody has gone through and everything like that, you start to go, okay, that might be the way that, just pick a martial art out there, Jeet Kune Do thinks of it,
Sure, yeah.
right? But in Bagua, we look at it like this. Okay, in Tai Chi, we look at it like this.
Oh,
In
yeah.
and like when you watch, like for example, well, let me put it in a somewhat more contemporary thing. The new show Shogun.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the one of the main characters, Toranaga, is basically like, no, don't kill don't kill the foreigner. We got to learn from him,
Mm,
right? He's like, he's important because we need to figure this out. There's new technology and stuff like that.
right.
And spoilers for those of you who don't haven't seen the show yet, but he brings cannons to Japan, and basically says this is how they work, and it just becomes this whole thing where it's just like now who has the most technological advance.
Yeah.
But even then, like the other samurai are like, I can fire faster and more
Hmm.
accurately with my bow and arrow than your clunky cannon can be
Oh,
loaded
as an
and shot.
archer, and
Yeah.
I say that with a grain of salt, by the way. I'm no Levi Morgan or anybody like that, but as an archer, I value that sentiment. Um,
Right. Well,
yeah,
and that's the thing, is that they're both right.
yeah,
The
that's what I was gonna
the
say.
cannons the cannons just wreak so much havoc when they do hit, but like the
It's like
samurai
choosing
are
a
just basically
claymore
like,
versus a side sword, right?
right. He's like, yeah, you can destroy one cannon can destroy a whole regiment of people on horseback, but check this out, and he he
In
can
10
like
seconds, I can
shoot
take out
the
5
wings.
dudes.
Yeah, he can shoot the wings off a fly
Yeah,
at the same time. He's like,
yeah.
oh, okay,
They both have their place. Taekwondo has
yeah,
its place. Muay Thai has its place. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they
hmm,
all have their place, right? So,
yeah,
that's a
absolutely.
great segue into our video. Uh,
Hmm.
so tonight we've got a playlist of my Holo-Education outreach program content. Now, I did say I was going to send you the old versions, Alan. I tried to. My phone was not happy with me trying to send all those old videos to you, and some of them were
No worries.
long as hell. So, but what I did for the last week and a half or so is I've been re-recording a lot of these exercises. The only thing, and I'll preface,
Remastering.
yeah,
Remastering.
remastering. I like that. I like special edition, if you will, the George Lucas cuts, and
Oh
kind of
no.
yeah. There's a distinct lack of Gungans though. So anyway, I have 12 videos in this playlist. I may or may
Okay.
not get through all of them tonight, but I do have some things I want to get through. And part of that is they're going to parallel a little bit what we saw with Alan, but there's going to give us that chance, like we were just seconds ago talking about, to compare and contrast and kind of see value in both or all versions of something. Also, something that I did, I kind of debated doing it, but I've done it, is I've given credit to people at the end of the video, people or literature or things like that, that helped me with that specific concept. So they may or may not have been the actual person who taught me in the first place, but definitely over the act of, sort of refining a concept or technique, they were prominent sources of knowledge for me. So I did that. Obviously, I can't put everybody who's influenced me for any specific tech. I mean, the list would be ridiculous. But I like to
Right.
give
Right.
a little bit of credit to a few people just because they stood out to me as having been very important to my understanding of that concept. So the first video I want to do, and it's just a background music. At some point, I'd like to add voiceovers, but for now, we'll consider this a
Hmm.
voiceover. The first one I want to do, Alan, is actually the one called The Three Offenses under Shicho.
Okay. All right.
So
Let me
when you have
cue
that
that
one
up
up,
for me.
yep. So this
Here we go.
is, before we start it, this is the core of Shicho for me. Um,
Okay.
and the reason I say that is I forget where I heard this, but I heard a translation of Shicho as meaning 3 cuts. So I kind of took it a step deeper. And again, I don't know which Star Wars language that happens to be. I don't know where I even read that, but I read it somewhere. And so I rolled with it. And I take it one step further to mean just 3. So like the 3 cuts, the 3 defenses, the 3 offenses, and there's lots of things you can break down into threes. You can break them into sixes too. But I just like to use that 3 when I'm teaching Shicho because it's a simple number. And also when I'm doing things, I'll do them in 3 speeds, or I'll do them 3 repetitions, then switch sides, that kind of thing. I just find that number 3 to be really useful for beginners. So for Form 1, it's a very prominent thing. So we'll start with this one. The 3 offenses, or the 3 cuts, is the way that I just colloquially say it when I'm teaching. So we'll start this in 3, 2, 1, go. Just some logos in the beginning. Another thing that I will preface with is I base everything on 10 zones of attack and defense. In modern Eskrima, a lot of times you'll see the number 12. I just take the head, which is usually in like 3 to 5 zones, and I gobble it down to 1 to 3 zones. That's all. So you've got zones 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 is upwards. 6 is down through the diagonal. 7, 8, 9, and 10 is the bisector vertically downward. So the reason I say it, just to point it out that way, is so now that you can watch this, we've got the sideways version. So the 3 cuts being chop, which stops at the middle of the target. Slice, which moves through, or slash, I think I call it in the video, same thing, which moves through the middle of the target. And then your stab, which some people refer to as a thrust, which goes into the middle of the target, does not have an arcing cut to it. So that's the next one we have here is slash. And I'm doing all of these. So go ahead.
So the idea is the same movements, just with a different intent.
Correct. Now, of course, as you get further along in your training, I do certain things like right now I'm cutting 90% of these with the foredge of the blade, or the front part of the 360 degrees. But like I think number 9, 8 or 9, coming up from the leg, I do with the back of the blade, or what you would call the spine on a normal sword. Just because it's a little more comfortable, but you could do that with all of them. You could do it where you're hitting with what would be the flat for all of them, just to get an idea of the different motion. And another thing I'm doing is I'm doing it all with the strong side forward, but down in the description I said, like, change the footwork, do it with a partner. So there's lots of ways that you can take this very simple 2-minute drill and turn it into like a 2-hour class.
Yeah, definitely.
So thoughts,
once you understand the 10 zones that you're targeting, it definitely is basically putting your mind into the intention of your attack.
Correct.
So a lot of this is training intention. And there are only certain things that you can, there's only so many ways to bend an elbow, right? So when we're looking at something like this, it is more of a, like, this is what we're looking for, and this is your intention. Now here's how to get from A to B. Right.
And you'll see at the end here, little special thanks for Sensei K there, and from Bendu Saber Combat, Matt Maughan. I believe he subscribes to the 3. He must have read the same article or whatever that I read about the whole 3 strikes, because looking back at some of his Shicho content, I've seen that pop up in his as well. So those are the 2 people that I thanked for this particular video, in addition to yourself and Katie and Eric, because over the last, almost 8 years, our conversations over the 7 have just been, we've covered everything. So, so that's the first one. And I don't know, give me some feedback while we go to the next one, which will be the 3 defenses. So go ahead and pull that one
3
up.
defenses. Okay, hold on a
second. Take your time.
Take your time. All right, I got it.
So we'll hit play in just a second here. But yeah, to me, a cut and dry video. Nothing too crazy. The one thing I want people to
shouldn't.
Yeah. Well, then the one thing I want people to realize is this is setting the stage now for, okay, those same 3 offenses are going to be the 3 cuts you use in Makashi. You're just going to be able to do them in
Right.
100 different ways after that. When you come to a taru, you're gonna like doing it with the flat or the back of the blade or whatever the case is. That's gonna really help you when you get to a taru, but you don't get that from a 2-minute video.
Right.
So let's move into the 3 defenses then, just right away. 3.
So
Go ahead.
just as a throwing this out there, the word "she" in Japanese is synonymous with death.
Interesting.
And the
I did not know
the
that.
number 4.
Oh.
And
Ichi-ni-san shi. Yeah, she is the number 4.
yeah. And
Oh.
then cho, just so you know, is means butterfly.
Huh. Interesting. So
death
deadly
butterfly.
butterfly or death butterfly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man,
So just
if
as
only
a,
Shicho was Japanese, that would be pretty
right.
badass. Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny. Well, I like it.
Anywho,
You just gave me some.
back to
I mean,
to
it's
the
not the same number,
3
but I'm
defenses.
still a fan. Well,
Yeah.
anyway, if somebody finds that translation, send me an email, sabermaoutreach@gmail.com. I'd love to know where the hell I found that information. And if not, I made it up and I'm rolling with it. So let's do the 3 defenses. By the way, I use the word rudiments. If anybody plays percussion, rudiments would be like your paradiddles, your drum rolls, your single taps, your double, and so all that. Your basics. It's just basics.
The things that are rudimentary.
Yeah, but they're not always basic when it comes to martial arts. So that's why I stayed away from the term basics, because some of these are not basic, but they are rudimentary. So anyway, just a little insight into my brain, which sometimes is more complicated than I wish. 3, 2, 1, go. The 3 defenses from Shicho. So it's going to follow the same format, strong side forward, but you can change the footwork and things. But now we're going to cover the 3.
Here we go.
The 3 defenses, which would be block, parry, and evade.
Okay.
A block, just like a chop,
forward.
would stop at the target or wait for the target to get to it. This is the way I would teach.
Right.
A parry would guide the target away or move through the target like a slash. And then an evasion is a direct movement out of the zone. Now, in this, when you get to evasion, you will see that I still cover with a blocking motion with the blade. So it looks like I'm actually moving and blocking, but the goal would be that blade is just there for insurance. I don't actually need to block.
Right.
And then in Soresu later, I get into voiding, which is moving the actual blade out of the way of a strike.
Nice.
Anyway.
So your definitions of block and parry are right on. And evasion is literally that, but I do like the fact that you're talking about moving the blade as you move, because you can't just step off the line. You're not dodging a train. You're dodging somebody that can actually get off the line with you if they see you start to move.
And you see my little hoppy motions here. I call this an initial step. I got that terminology from my teachers. Some people call it a step drag or a hop step, but basically it is that. I try not to move my feet together at all. I try to keep a pretty equidistance between my feet, but I do have to, initial meaning the foot closest to the direction I want to travel. So the initial foot heading in that direction. I don't know where they got that terminology. It's just the terminology I use. So for that one, I thanked Kay again because of his Shicho prowess, but also I put Courtney Monroe on this one, old Darth Chocolate himself, because I've seen some of his, we'll call it holocron content, and he was very, like, the way that he formatted his stuff was very inspiring to me to do it this way as well. So shout outs to those guys. Anything else you want to talk about on that one, Alan? Again, cut and dry.
Well, as far as defenses are concerned, right there, the definition of defense is to not get hit, and anything that you can do to not get hit in this context, block, parry, strike, all the things that are there. the evasion is my favorite because it means that blade and body move together.
Yeah.
But that's my personal preference.
Well, you talked about
But
that last week with
yes.
your content as well. Blade and body moving
Hmm.
together with Shicho. Same thing.
Yeah.
And how it was to disrupt the structure of the person, which we talked about comes up later
Right.
in Form 5. So here it is again. Shicho is every
Yeah.
form is Shicho. And I'm hoping with
Yeah.
these two videos in particular that comes across. That's kind of my goal with these
Right.
two videos.
Yeah. And the fact that you're saying this is the rudimentary stuff, right?
Yeah.
This is really how it goes. Yeah. This is the stuff that every beginner has to learn if they've never done any of the stuff before, right? You just go through it quickly. And if you've done it before, this should be something that's already in your body. It
And
might
I
be
put
called
that
something else.
Yep, I put that in the description. They are used in DESMA system as warm-ups as well as tools for learning new SMA forms and honing basic techniques. And I think suitable for practitioners of all experience. So in other words, like just because this is your 10th year or your 10th day doesn't mean that you should stop practicing these.
Right.
Yeah. Right on with that. I'm glad you picked that
great.
up. Okay, so let's move into, because we're going to jump now from Form 1. We're going to stay in Form 1 for the next one, but then I'm going to jump you into Form 3 to follow that. So let's go to the Shicho Kata, guards and strikes.
All right. Gotcha.
Now in this one, and again in the description, I'm like almost too descriptive. I put all the guards you need to know. I put all the strikes you need to know, all the footwork that you need to know to do it similar or how I've showed. And this is a 9.5 minute video, so we probably won't watch the whole thing. But the reason it's 9.5 minutes is because I took the stationary version and then I added at least 2 versions of I think 3 versions of footwork. There's that number. There's that number 3 again. So we can peek at those, but we don't need to watch all 9.5 minutes. So we'll see what we can do here. And eventually, I'd like to add chapters to this particular video for that reason.
Awesome.
So anyway, anybody who's listening, we'll start this out. Shicho Kata, guards and strikes, and 3, 2, 1, go. So for this one, I use the term kata almost loosely. A lot of times a kata is only done one way, maybe on both sides, but it's only done from point A to point Z, and you don't usually change footwork or things like that. But in this kata, I'm using that term so loosely that you can do things like change the footwork. You can change which side is forward. And I think I did all of these things in this video. I went ham. So you can see here, I'll go through the cuts for you and everything on the next run through on the side view. We'll just let people see the first run through. There's 7 guards and there's 6 cuts, but there's only 3 types of cuts.
Okay.
So that should give you an idea. And the 7 guards, it's really 3, then 3 fool's guards, then a special guard. So middle guard goes into a stab. Then high guard goes into a slash. Then low guard goes into a chop. Then I have long point or middle fool, and the cuts repeat. So then high fool through the slash, low fool or tails guard through the chop, and then we come to eye guard or key guard, depending on who you talk to.
Yeah.
So there's your...
Well, that's good.
There they are. And then
that was with the offhand side forward, so the non-weapon hand.
Correct. And for some reason, for Shicho, when I'm two-handing, it feels more comfortable for me to put the offhand side forward. But I know for a lot of people, they teach the weapon side forward, so I've done both now.
Yeah.
And these are arbitrary zones.
Safer when your weapon. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, it does. It feels a little safer. I don't know if that's true or not, but you can definitely get your weapon manipulated more easily.
It depends on your it depends on your result.
So we'll go through stationary, and then we'll kind of jump into a little bit of the footwork, but I'm not going to go too crazy. We're already 2 minutes into this video. One thing I want to say is these cuts could be anywhere. And the reason I put them in this particular order is just that they were the most economic as far as motion. If I'm starting in middle guard, it's really easy to just thrust. If I'm starting
Right.
in long point, I'm already thrusting, so I just lean or lunge into it. If I'm starting in high guard, a slash makes a lot of sense because I'm coming from on high all the way down low. So anyway, that's just why I chose that order. But you can switch it
Yeah,
up.
that was good. Well, the thing about it is, again, as a martial arts teacher, you have the ability to go, okay, if I only move, my weight forward and back as I
Right.
swing my sword, I can make a beginner able to do that, you know. Whereas if you started off with what we're seeing now with the footwork, then, their heads would explode
Yeah.
immediately as soon as you start to go, okay, you have to step here, you have to do this, you have to shift your weight like this. So the again, rudimentary style of like, okay, here is this one part of this technique, and
Yeah.
then here's another part of this technique. Now put it together. Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's basically the key of teaching any sort of basics, so that all of this stuff makes sense
Yeah.
later.
Right.
While you're in a match, or while you're in your kata, you can start to extrapolate the information. You can extrapolate the intent. You can extrapolate
Ooh,
the
50-cent
the
word.
actual tech.
Extrapolate.
Yeah.
We like that.
Well, and that's basically why for you and me, as we do this stuff, we're watching a specific set of movements, and you and I can be like, oh, that looks like this particular thing that I used to know
Mm-hmm.
or used to practice. And, I would probably do the same thing, but with something else, because again, there's only so many ways to
Right.
bend an elbow. But if you're looking at this and going, okay, well, that looks more like a katana strike, and then another person will look at it like, oh no, that's a longsword technique. It's like,
Right.
no, it's both.
Yeah, it's a
It can
lightsaber
be
strike.
both.
And again,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm hoping people glean, because it's important to go through those steps of like, this looks like this. No, it looks like this.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think it looks like this. But it really, that's
Mm-hmm.
important to go through those steps, because it's all correct and it's all incorrect and it's all
Mm-hmm.
correct again. Like
Right.
one teacher explained it to me as, you learn a punch and then you learn a different punch, and there's two different punches, and then you learn a kick, and it's a different, and then you two different kicks, and then you learn a third, and then you learn a third, and then you are in it for 10 years, then you're in it for 20 years, and a punch is just a punch, a kick is just a kick. Doesn't matter which martial art you learned it from. We've talked about that
Right.
in other
Exactly.
episodes. But then another teacher came to me and said it almost the exact same way that you did too, where it's like, this isn't exactly how you said it, but all the information is good, then all the information that isn't your information sucks, then all of the information is good again, and you have to go through kind of that evolution.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So for me, really quickly, just if anybody's wondering where that number 3 comes in again, the 3 types of footwork that I demonstrate here, aside from stationary shifting, which means my feet stay put and I just turn from one stance into another on the balls of my feet. For me, the 3 types of footwork, meaning traversing footwork, would be a step through, otherwise known as a C step in some arts, because you make the letter C from the inside to the outside, which I didn't do very well. I have an initial step, which I explained earlier as using the foot closest to the direction of travel, then catching the other foot up to it into the same stance. That's a complicated way of saying hop with the front, or whichever foot is going that way. And then a shuffle, which would be your feet do almost come together, but then they immediately extend back into the location they came from. Now in Ataru, we'll add more to that. We'll add leaping, we'll add spinning and things like that.
Awesome.
So I think 6.5 minutes. We're coming to the end of this one. 6 minutes and 52 seconds to be exact on my dial. Mm-hmm. We can hit pause on this and we'll go right into a different version of this same one. So anybody listening, you can hit pause on the recording now and finish the video if you'd like, or you can jump in with us, because it's just going to go through a little bit more footwork. Everything else is the same. We're going to go scroll down to Suresu, Kata, guards, and nulls. And I use the word nulls after much determination. because it took me a long ass time to kind of decide what I was going to call, because defenses, I like it, but for Ceresu, it wasn't powerful enough.
Right.
So null to me, I'm nullifying anything they do if I'm a Ceresu practitioner. It's said that a Ceresu practitioner may not be able to beat you, but they are unbeatable. So if I can nullify everything you do, then that's what I want. So in this one, I'm using those 3 defenses: the block, the parry, and the evasion. But I'm calling them nulls because between the guards, I want the practitioner to envision that this attack has all this intention coming at you, and what you do is just puts water on the fire.
I like it.
So let's really quickly, I use and we'll go over this in a minute. Maybe that's the next video we'll watch. I have your block and your parry, but there's also something called an infinity parry that I'm going to go over, and that's just what I call it. I'm sure there's 100 different words for it. So that's in this as well. So it's block, infinity parry, and evasion. But between that, the 3 guards are still the same. But you will see a difference in how I perform them in Ceresu versus how I perform them in Shicho. So 3, 2, 1, begin. And
sounds good. I'm looking forward to this.
To the comparison. And this one I didn't show any footwork. This is just the stationary version. What'd you say?
I said I love Ceresu.
Oh, yeah.
So this is awesome.
So offhand side forward for this one again, and the majority of time in Ceresu, offhand side forward. And I'll go over these on the side view. I'll kind of commentate what guards I'm doing. And you notice I'm one-handed on this one as well. So I'll go through everything. I start with a salute into middle guard, with a block into high guard, infinity parry into low guard, evasion into long point. We got a block into fool's high, infinity to tail guard, evasion into eye guard, and then we salute again. And then I got crafty at the end of these Ceresu videos and started adding the word resilience in Arabesh.
So for
go ahead.
Ceresu, all right, the biggest, like, I feel like the biggest lesson to be learned in Ceresu is the resilience or the endurance, and to be able to interpret that, right, is very important to anybody's Ceresu form, right? Because there is a lot of defense, that has to be done. Right. Of course, it is the defensive form, but it was the defensive form, and then pushing up my nerd glasses right now to combat blaster fire. Right. But like you're not really
facing blaster
fire. You're not really. Facing blaster fire with in the
or more than one opponent.
World, so like
most of the time.
And that's really that's the interpretation I went with.
Right.
Was to you're not actually, nobody's going to be sitting there shooting a Nerf gun at you as you're fighting. Okay, it's not
we've done it. It's fun. I recommend people try it, but you're right. Nobody's doing it.
Well, how about this? You won't be doing that in a tournament.
Exactly.
But if you do and you can pull it off, let me know how you pull it off. Because
we actually do have some experimental rules, but that's to be determined.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
But you're right. Yeah,
so, like blaster stance is not a thing in most tournaments.
Correct.
But there is something to be said about actually taking source material and interpreting it.
Yeah.
Interpreting it in a way of art and still keeping it in the martial sense.
Yeah.
So I'm going to Now, I feel like I'm a sequel apologist because I actually like some of the fights in the sequel trilogy.
I
But
get you.
but it's one of those things where I'm like there is no, because of the story, right? There is no formal
Yeah,
training, so Rey just does stuff,
yeah.
and Kylo Ren just does stuff.
Well, and that's
He got
kind of the
like
purpose
the
of
rudimentary forms.
yeah.
Yeah, he got the rudimentary forms, and then he just went off and did his own
That's
thing.
kind of the purpose of this
So
holocron stuff too. Like, how many people really have access to somebody not like us, but like us, where they actually care about like taking this a little bit seriously, and they actually
mhm.
know a little bit of martial arts they could teach on top of it. But how many people are like that? They come to YouTube for it. They
Right.
come
Well,
to the internet.
also also when you go through formal training and you are called upon to fight, chances are you're going to do the same thing that works over and over again. You're
Yeah,
not
that's
gonna.
true. That's a good point.
You and only when it doesn't work do you try to find something
Yeah.
new. So, very important part of the training is doing something new, not for the sake of doing something new, but
Right.
because if what you do that works well does not, you have something to fall back upon.
Mm-hmm.
Something new that you can train with. So this is very good as far as I'm saying, like the stepping, the you call them nulls or
Yeah.
nullifications.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the movement that I see when I'm watching this is, okay, I am taking this angle and I am going to use this one technique in order to not get hit and then get to a different position,
That's very
which
key for
is,
Form 3 in particular for me.
yeah,
I'm glad you picked up
yeah.
on that. I'm really glad you
Mm-hmm.
picked up on that because we're going to watch a combo later on where that is the
Uh-huh.
whole purpose of the combo.
Uh-huh.
And I told you
Right.
last week I don't even teach attacks in Saresu, but you're going to get a little peek into my cheek with that one because not my butt cheek, my cheekiness. Because I do actually. There's an offense in this combo, but it's taught as a defensive posture that happens to cut them
Right.
because of the motion before. So yeah, I'm really glad you picked up on that. Oh, that makes me okay. That makes me feel like. I hate to use the word validation because it sounds so needy, but it makes me feel like okay, I'm not totally full of the donkey poop. That's good to know. you know?
No, again, this is your interpretation of it, and I'm
Yeah,
I'm just saying that that's a good
you're picking up on the
idea.
interpretation. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a good interpretation of it, because then I can, like, my eye went, okay, that's what he's trying to
I
do, and
love
that
that.
does fit into the idea or the chapter of Soresu that I understand as well.
And if you're forming a system, I feel like this is all martial arts. You have to do it this way. I mean, this is the natural way that I don't know. Maybe you don't have to. I shouldn't say it that way, but the way my brain naturally goes is I have to think of concepts and I have to think of how these concepts fit into what I'm told about the thing, right? So if I'm learning karate
Exactly.
and it's knife attacks today, like, first of all, this is a very bad situation. If I know that concept, then I can learn anything about knife attacks. But
Right.
that's a funny example, but it goes for anything. That today we're learning how to kick
Right.
to the body. So if I know that this martial art, I can learn it based on my understanding of the concept or my interpretation of what I'm told about that concept. So I'm glad you picked up on that because it should be
Yeah.
that easy. It should be that
Right.
simple to just go, okay, this angle or now I'm moving this way. Why wouldn't I just move this way next? I feel like we
Right.
fight what I call the monkey brain all the time. That monkey brain
Mm-hmm.
just wants to do the
Constantly.
thing. It just wants to do it. It just wants to do it right. And it wants to do it right every time. But our human brain fights our monkey brain all the time. And in martial arts, let
Right.
your monkey brain take over.
Yeah.
Um,
Sometimes it's useful,
so let's
and
go
that's the
into
thing. It's
go
it's
go ahead.
so I wanted to go on a tangent here a little bit,
That's fine.
because you talked about a knife fight.
Yeah.
So I had the pleasure, question mark, of watching the remake of Roadhouse with Jake
Oh,
Gyllenhaal
you
and
saw it?
Conor McGregor.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah,
It's on my list
it's
just because I'm a
I
martial
sat
arts
here and
nerd.
watched it. Yeah, I sat here and watched it, and it is an MMA movie through and through. Um, but it's just really funny. Like the at one point, uh, the main character who Jake Gyllenhaal plays is basically like, hey, that guy has a knife under his shirt. You know, when he talks to another bouncer and he says, when he comes at you, take a big step back, punch him in the face. And I don't know how many times I've taught knife defenses where you have to address the knife. You have to address the knife. You have to address the knife. And there's so many martial arts where you have to address the knife, whereas in he was like, just don't get cut.
Yeah.
I was like,
You have to address not
he's not
getting cut.
wrong.
That's 100% correct. It's a nuance though, and that's like, I love this kind of episode we're doing for that reason, because you're getting like, we've been there, and we've been the ones teaching like you have to address the knife.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I teach you have to address not getting cut. You have to address that.
Yeah.
And you're gonna, by the way, so you have to address making sure you don't get cut in the soft and squishies.
Right.
Yeah.
Choose where you get cut. That's where it happens.
Yeah,
and
you cut,
to choose
cut
where
them
get cut.
twice every time they cut you. Or get that damn knife as fast as you can, or get the hell out of there as fast as you can. That's a whole episode in of itself, but it's a valid comparison. Let's go into speaking of
that was a very Suresu thing that he taught. So that's what made me think about it.
It is. It's a very Suresu thing. And in Filipino martial arts, especially at a high level, you're not addressing the knife. You're addressing the hand that holds the knife. You're addressing the neck that holds the head, that holds the body, that holds the knife, right? So, yeah.
Right.
Anyway, let's go to Form 2, and we'll kind of transition from the guards and cuts kata into an upgrade of what we saw from the Shicho guards. So in Makashi, I teach the hanging guards. And I do teach them in advanced Shicho, two-handed as well as one-handed, but a lot of times I'm trying to transition you into Makashi if that's a place where you like to hang out. So this would be Makashi point. Did I say point tracking? Yeah, point tracking. Makashi point tracking. Now, this is not necessarily guards of any kind. This is all the guards and none of the guards. It's really creating the circle with the tip of your blade and trying to create what I call the outer rim or the eggshell that is your zone of offense and defense for particularly a precise art such as Makashi. So this would be from about your eyebrows down around your shoulders and hips, down to right around your shins. Okay, you create a little invisible egg around that, and I'm tracking that with the point of the weapon. So 3, 2, 1, begin. And this gives you the hanging guard sort of as a result of this exercise.
Yasalimiri.
Yeah. Point tracking and just literally tracking your different 10 target zones with the point of the weapon. So I start in zone 1 and I move to zone 2 on the opposite side of the neck. Then zone 3 is the rib cage and arm area, and 4 would be the opposite side. And I'm trying to just make sure the point stays centered and sort of level. 5 is the very center. 6 is upper corner, 7 other upper corner, and you notice I use a little C shape there. 8 and 9 are very interesting because 9 is a weird hanging guard. Your wrist is what you call supinated or wrist up. So anyway, this is just for somebody trying to get used to putting one weapon, holding one weapon, developing the wrist and arm and shoulder coordination and strength, developing the offhand.
So this is very much looks like one of the drills that I teach to the people that have done fencing. So it's very much a foil epee
Mm-hmm. And I think I
parry.
actually got it
Uh,
from mostly Side Sword and Saber, and I'll give credit. We'll see who I
mhm.
give credit to. That'll tell me. Oh yeah, Nick and Michael Thomas from the
There
Academy
you
of
go.
Historical Fencing in England. These guys are
Nice.
legit, and they've been doing
Yeah.
this forever on YouTube. They've been one of the
Yeah.
original, what I call HEMA poop posters, if you will. And they're not poop
Yeah.
posters at all. They're really really legitimate martial artists. They're great people, and I think they've had training in other martial arts as well, like karate and things like that. So they're really good, but they have a ton of content that's been on here forever. And I didn't pick this drill up directly from them, but I definitely honed it to what it is, which is very simple. And thanks to them, it was simplified. So, yeah, all of their
Mhm.
saber and side sword and rapier and stuff like that, really phenomenal content. So I delved heavily into that for all my Makashi stuff when I was a few years ago, sort of looking back at all of it and going, I need more of this, I need more of that, I need less of this or whatever. Yeah, so there's point tracking. And that leads us right into,
Mhm.
since it kind of introduces the hanging guards, and you can give me any commentary you want, Alan. We're going to go into hanger transitions from there. So the next video is
Hanger
Makashi
transitions.
hanger transitions.
Okay.
And we'll just pause on that real quick. Anything you want to point out before
Sure.
we hit play?
No, like I said, this is
Very similar to
the
something you
guards
do.
that you showed, and the parries are
Yeah.
straight out of fencing.
Even the stance,
It's
I adjusted the
very,
stance to toe
yeah,
forward as opposed to toe kind of cocked at a 45, which is my usual stance. So, yeah. Okay, let's go
yeah.
into this then. Hanger transitions. 3, 2, 1, go. And this one, it's not a true like alternating transitions. Like it doesn't go
Okay.
standard hanger. But I just kind of tried to go what was natural body mechanics. So I start out in a hanging guard, I believe. We'll find out here.
Hmm.
Um,
All right.
and I'm moving between standard guards and hanging guards. That's really it. Yep. I start in a hanger. I pop out to a 1, a hanger 2. And I call these hanging guards, but they could be blocks or parries as well. They could be like an actual
Right.
intentional, not just a position for my blade to chill in.
Right.
So a hanger,
So
for
like
anybody wondering,
on
would just be anything where the tip is sub horizontal, you know,
right.
sub center.
Yeah. So the hilt is higher than the tip of the blade.
Correct. Yeah, that's a better way to say it.
Right.
I don't know why I was saying all that nonsense.
Yeah.
5 is an
So
interesting one. If somebody
yeah.
thrusts to the inside, you almost
Uh,
have to push or parry that out of the way. There's really very few
right.
ways to not parry that out unless you just dodge. But yeah, it's a simple
Right.
drill. That one's over.
Right.
Thoughts on that
Right.
one?
That's good. So in doing some of Makashi, right? A lot of the oh, look at that, you got Fight Saber on there.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah, everyone has
the
Fight
yeah
Saber. I also have Nick
the
on there. I give credit to Nick and
yeah
Doug on this one. Um,
yeah
Doug from San Diego Sabers and Nick Richardson from
mhm,
Penguin Saber Academy. The two true Makashi specialists that I know.
yeah. So the Nick has been like a great resource because he's actually like involved in fencing opens and all that fun stuff
I get my
like on a
stance from
consistent
Makashi
basis.
has been refined by
Yeah,
watching Nick.
yeah. And the fact that he's still in it and judging and going through, you know, that um, the eye of fencing is really cool because you see it in his fighting, you see it in his students.
Yeah.
You know, they are very much uh, my friend Tony Tripp, who's like an Olympic fencer. He actually went out to Virginia and won last October's uh, Praxium War for Saberlight Knights. Shout out to Ryan and Courtney.
Yeah.
Um, he uh, he did a little Makashi, you know, Makashi fencing hybrid class before
Oh,
or
cool.
after I did my Saber staff class.
Very
And
cool.
his point was like, no, if you're going to go up against a fencer, that if they're any good, they will wait for you to commit to something, and then they'll strike like a viper.
Oh, I can't wait.
Because
that's our next video.
Yeah.
That's our next video.
So that was his whole idea was like, no, if you are going to be good at fencing, you're going to have to address and attack, because that's the Olympic fencing rules, right? You can't just both attack at the same time. You have to address and attack. You have to have what's called right of way.
Yeah.
So that's very much a.
It's actually a rule. It's not.
Olympic
it's not
fencing.
just something that's courteous to do. It's a rule.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so that's
correct me if I'm
thing,
wrong. It's not a
time.
rule, but is that not largely how Sonda is scored as well? Like, you get a lot of credit for like catching kicks and takedowns as counters and things like. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, you get more points for doing a counter than you do a.
Because they still get points for
kick.
hitting you, but if you can take like if they get 1 point for or 2 points for a kick to the body, but you catch that kick and take them down, don't you get like 3 points or something like that?
Yeah, something of that.
So yeah, you're just stacking up, and it's like an arcade game at that point for countering.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where you can get points no matter what. Like
similarity between Sonda and fencing, I didn't think I was going to make today.
But yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Though, is like going through parries and your transitions there. That's what I saw. Was like, no, this is a movement in order to take somebody's attack and then counterattack from that position.
So that is our next video. I love it. Let's go into Makashi rudiments, hangers with counters. And this is every hanging guard. So all 10 zones hanging guards. And I use stabs and chops as my counters. And you'll see, I think for the most part, it's when I'm on my weapon side, I'm using a stab. And when I'm on my offhand side, I'm using a chop. But that'll take us into the next one as well, the next video as well. So let's go hangers with counters, and you'll see exactly what Alan's talking about. I'm waiting for the person to strike. I'm catching or parrying, and immediately either riding their blade into a counter or, disconnecting and what I call flick chopping. So 3, 2, 1, go. And again, the 10 zones. One side of the neck, the other side of the neck, ribs, center of the body, shoulder, knee, center of the head. So it's kind of all 10 of them in that order. And with Makashi, I'm almost always strong side forward. So I start in my hanger, and I come immediately into a thrust to the cheek. Then my other hanger comes to a very short chop. That's the key with these Makashi drills is I'm not trying to overextend because I'm only using one wrist to support all that hilt and blade. And it gets a little strained when I do that. So I want my chops to be efficient. They could be slashes. I'd have to recover with something like a molinet or an extra like whirl of the arm though on a slash.
Yeah.
For a lot of these.
Yeah, especially when you're dealing with parries, a lot of times, just because we tend to have adrenaline flowing through us, we tend to over parry, especially when we first start. And to practice the fast twitch of I've made contact, I should counterattack here
immediately
is very important.
To what's immediately open. For me, that's the big thing. Like, especially with Makashi, with Saresu, you'll see I get into a little bit more of what could be perceived as wasted motion. But with Makashi, I mean, zero waste for any reason. Even if it's not wasted in Saresu, you're still not going to do it in Makashi if it's not worth your 2.5 milliseconds. And who did I give credit to on this one? The Academy of Historical Fencing again. But I should mention that was probably just due to the fact that I couldn't. Two Nicks. I got a little confused. This is largely how Nick Richardson has success in competition.
Which video is this?
The one we just watched, the hangers with counters. In terms of a quick parry, it might not be a hanging parry.
My video kept playing, and I was like, "Oh, are we on flick chops now?"
No, but that is the next one because that's what I used in that video. Okay. So we'll prep that one. But would you agree with that assessment of Nick's fighting style?
Oh yeah. Nick is very quick, in doing it, but he likes to fight more defensively, mainly because of that fencing background.
Yeah.
And yeah, even though he is very adept at what he does, sometimes it could be to his detriment to wait for somebody to attack.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to see and to watch when you watch a fencer fight. Like, there are certain things, especially in lightsaber combat, that just won't work, and sometimes it is because there's a ticking clock, before you
or the ring is only a certain size. That's another one that comes up sometimes.
Right, and it's not a strip, so there's a lot more lateral movement and stuff like that. But it is still, one-on-one, which is to the fencer's,
definitely
delight, I guess.
And the term contention for Makashi, which I added to the end of some of these videos. I got wise to it and added that to the end. But that's what it means to contend with, or to one-on-one provide a superior solution to the problem at hand, much to the chagrin of your opponent and the rapid chagrin of your opponent. So let's move into flick chops, because that's what I did in that video. And one thing about this that you'll see is I'm using the spine of the blade as well as the foredge. And I do that, again, for economy of motion, but also just to give a different flavor. This is a lightsaber. It's not a sword. So you can use the whole blade to cut with. And a lot of times you'll find your blade, especially on the lower positions, 8 and 9. So let's go 3, 2, 1, go. Especially on 8 and 9 by your knees, you'll find that an upward motion is a lot easier and more economical than a full turning of the wrist to cut upwards. But it depends on the situation and your body at the time. So that's what this is. Only using my wrist or to chop and trying not to let it extend past center, because then my wrist is not able to support. So you've got your 2 neck targets and such, and I think on 5 I might start with the 5 is the spine of the blade. 6 and 7 I use the foredge again. 8 and 9 I think spine for both of them. And then on 10 I use the foredge, but I do teach a cool back edge strike just for Makashi that I might show on a different video. Go ahead, Alan. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I was thinking about the different things, and going back to our one of our favorite sources for these swarms, the Path of the Jedi.
Yep.
This is the lunge, or the piercing motion. I believe they called it a shim.
Shim, yeah.
In that book.
Yep.
And then shi meant chop, and then, or maybe cho means chop, and shi means slash, or something like that.
Yeah, but they do use the same sort of terminology, same definitions almost.
Yeah.
Actually, I forgot about that.
Very much.
I forgot about that. I can't believe I forgot. I used that too. Oh man.
But that's one of those things where you said contention form, but it's also like economy of motion is how I see Makashi, where you're going to cut the angle just right. You're going to use the least amount of least amount of energy to get the result done.
Right.
Right. So it might not be the flashiest form, but it gets the work done.
Right.
But if done with some flash, like what we just saw, it gets a little bit of that's where the term hand sniping comes from.
Right.
Just riding their blade into their hand and going into the
That was
thing.
definitely
So that's
on my
very
mind
much
for this video. Definitely on my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's basically what I saw
Nice.
in that.
Good. I'm glad. Okay. This is good. Things are translating. I like that. Well, then I think we have time to finish. So I'll just show these last couple videos are just a couple minutes each. So I think we're going to have time. We're going to go into the last Makashi video, which is called Lunging Stabs. And this is Makashi bread and butter. This is as rudimentary as it gets when you're transitioning from Shicho into Makashi, in my opinion, which is worth as much as you paid for it, which is $0 according to my podcast accounting. So anyway, this is basically your classic fencing stab. But when I say fencing, I think of fencing more in a classical sense of rapier and side sword than foil epee saber, just because that's actually the first type of fencing I was introduced to through like Zorro and such. Then I found Olympic fencing and I was like, oh, people actually do what Zorro did just with a safer equipment. So in my mind, that's always been fencing to me first. So you'll see particularly the extension of the body, in my opinion, is a little more structured than extended. But that's one of those things that like it takes sort of a martial artist's eye to appreciate the difference, and neither one is bad. It's just that this is the way my body has learned it because of the scope. Right. So lunging stabs, 3, 2, 1, go. This is really just about being able to extend yourself, fully commit to an attack, but also recover. And that's a big deal. So hopefully it doesn't look like I'm trying too hard to recover. I haven't actually paid that much attention, so I'll pay attention now.
Lunging with the front leg.
Lunging with the front leg as opposed to a full body lunge. This would just be a one-legged lunge.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's an interesting thing because especially in Olympic fencing and all that, like, how long your opponent's arm is, know how long their sword is.
And you have measurements on the floor of how long the pitch is.
Yeah. And whereas in lightsaber matches, as far as I've seen, you're looking at, a huge difference in blade length, in hilt length, in arm length, and in stride length. So it's a little bit more important, especially like what you're doing here is throwing your other arm out.
Yeah, you can't see that until the side view very well, but that's an important concept that I was hoping you would say. Go ahead.
Yeah, it'll get you another 2 or 3 inches to throw your other arm.
Well, and you stay balanced, and recovery becomes easier because, to me, pushing with my front foot to get back into my fighting stance is I don't want to say easy, but I've trained it, I can do it. But pulling my arm back to my small of my back is also sort of helping to physically pull everything back together. And I gave Nick a lot of credit for this one.
Yes.
But I gave Doug and the Academy of Historical Fencing credit because I refined the technique based on Academy of Historical Fencing. But if you want to see somebody who knows how to do this and recover, Doug Dearman from San Diego Sabers knows how to do this and recover. And there's a whole lot of Doug. He's not a large individual, but he's very tall and long. And there's a whole lot of him to go and come back. And he can do it very fast.
Yeah, he's amazing.
All credit where it's due on this one, and for such a key concept in Makashi, I think it's important to give people good credit for that one.
Yeah, great point too. Like, and Doug's former Padawan Robert also was very good at all of that.
Yeah.
He was very good at recovering. That's the thing. It's like once you're committed, you got to recover if you don't, especially if you don't hit.
Oh, he was annoying. Robert was I should
Yeah.
give Robert credit too, because I think I did in one video. I can't remember which one, but I didn't stay for the credits of all of them. He was annoyingly so. Annoyingly good at recovering. Doug was just as fast at extending, but man, Robert was way too good at recovering, and so irritating as a Form 5 fighter to fight someone like Robert, because he's just never there for the counter.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's go back into Form 3 now. We have 2 Form 3 videos, and then we're done for the night.
Sure.
But we'll have more of these in the future, Alan. I know you've got a ton of content. I know you're probably going to go out and film a bunch more now anyway. We've got Courtney on hold. Maybe we'll do some of this with his stuff that he has. So we've got 2 more of these from me, and I've got more in the video queue to be edited too. So we'll come back to all this. But we're going to go into Form 3 infinity parrying from Suresu. Infinity parrying, which some might call figure 8s. Some might call just spins or flourishes, but I call them infinity parries for a specific reason, and that reason is my blade doesn't stop until I tell it to. So
yeah, definitely.
In this particular one, you do spin, but sometimes it's not a spin. Sometimes it's sort of like in your Makashi combo from last week, like that, what do you call it? Like Sword of Heaven? What is that called? Where it goes in front of your face. It's not really a true spin. It's sort of like a, you know what I'm talking about?
You lost me. I'm not sure which. You said Sword of Heaven, and I was like, what?
In your Makashi 5-hit combo, I believe it's the second strike. It recovers in front of your face before you go to the next angle.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Wait, doesn't that have what is it called?
No, it's just my 1 through 5 combination.
Oh, I thought that strike had like a particular like name in Kung Fu that had like the word heaven or something in it. But you know, I could just be making up cool stuff in my head because I'm that guy.
I mean, we can make something happen. There is a straight sword technique, which a lot of my Makashi is based upon.
Well, that's what I'm referring to. I've seen it in straight sword. And I don't know if it has a special name.
There's a straight sword technique called Steel Cloud, which basically is what you're
that's what I'm describing, referencing. Basically. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. That sounds Cloud. Right enough to me. I like that even more than Heavenly Sword or whatever I said. So, yeah, I like Steel Cloud a lot, but that's going to be my screen name on some forum where I'm going to talk crap about all different sword. Nobody's sword is going to be good enough for me. That's going to be my shtick on there. Right. Okay, so let's go into infinity parry. My point with all that was any of those could be an infinity parry in Suresu, just meaning you address the defense, but your blade never stops, and it goes right into the next thing, sort of like we described in the beginning of the episode with the first videos. So 3, where did I go? Infinity parrying. 3, 2, 1, go. And I'm going to do this, I believe, in 2 speeds. So the first 2 angles, front and side view, are at a normal-ish speed. But then the second 2 angles would be full speed. No stopping whatsoever. So you'll see it kind of looks like I'm doing the same zones over and over again, but that's where in your mind you have to keep each zone straight. Right. And I've also referred to these as slap parries before because you're sort of slapping the attack out of the way.
Right. So what I like about this is the fact that you're, again, twisting your waist.
My structure,
to change your structure, to make your structure go with your parry. So when you're going in and doing, especially when you're fighting, it's so important to keep moving and not just move one part of your body, but your whole body.
Right.
Because if like you were describing to about Robert, you know, the best block is to not be there. Right. It's like It just, if you're not there, then they can't counterattack.
Yeah.
So it's very, very much one of those concepts, right? To parry and move, not just parry. That is an important part of any sort of, not just weapons fighting, but any sort of fighting, is to be able to go from an attack and then not be there for the counterattack.
Yeah.
Right. So it's super important to practice that skill, practice that technique, and be very much okay with moving. And unfortunately, sometimes there are martial arts out there that will discourage that. But the thing is, they don't discourage it. They just tell you to do it better. That's the weirdest thing, right?
Yeah.
So they tell you to do it, but don't do it. And one of the best ones I can think of is there, and I'm probably going to get the actual name wrong, so I'm not going to say it out loud. So there is a style of Spanish rapier dueling that is basically done in a small circle. And
I've seen this before, but I have no clue what it's called.
Yeah, so it's really cool and really awesome thing.
Spanish rapier is special. I have a very special place in my heart for Spanish rapier.
So basically, it's unlike a lot of your. I'm gonna throw a bunch of movies under the bus here. Unlike your Three Musketeers, whatever flavor of Three Musketeers that you've watched, like there is no long hallway where you're fighting. There is no anything like that. It's literally you and your opponent measure your swords. You walk in a circle, and that's it. That's the only space that you have.
And isn't this particular style largely, if not completely, thrusting focused or stab focused?
Yeah. Yes. And so sometimes they do it with a small dagger as well. So they'll do
with a little bit of a parrying ability.
Yeah. They have a parrying dagger and a rapier.
I've seen this being taught before, and just the efficiency of some of these people's ability to turn their arms and angle their shoulders and their necks to just barely not get frickin' slit, like put a keyhole right through you. Oh,
well, that's what I saw when you're twisting and doing that
with the
Here's I'm gonna maybe break some hearts out there. That only works if the other person's playing that game with you.
Yes.
So
yes, if you can't play that game with somebody who's using a full array of wide, flashy swings, and it's just not. You have to address the real threat, which is all that stuff coming at you.
Right, and all things being equal, right? Your body mechanics and your body, right? Your actual, arm reach and everything like that. That does make a big factor in whether or not those techniques will work.
Yeah,
they are great techniques and they're really good. I encourage everybody to learn about it and do it. The only thing that is very constant is the fact that there are no
constants.
Perfect. I was gonna say there are no perfect situations.
Perfect techniques, perfect situations.
You're gonna have to practice a bunch of different techniques in a bunch of different ways in order to deal with what you have. Right?
Oh my gosh!
You
are the king of the freaking segues, Alan, because that tells us about our next video. But go ahead and finish your thought.
Well, I was gonna say, if I was a 7 foot tall, 300-pound athlete that swings a sword, I will fight incredibly different than the guy that is 5'8" and likes to jump around.
Yeah, so I feel seen. I'm not 5'8", but I feel seen. I'm even shorter than that, but somebody saw me down here. um, you know, with just really quickly to cap off kind of what we're talking about in terms of moving your structure, and somebody you're very familiar with, Richard Marsden, who teaches the Phoenix Society of Historical Swordsmanship, which I should have given credit to in at least that video. His Polish Saber instruction, there's a lot of talk of squaring the hips behind the blade instead of using the arm for all of that motion, but it does use a lot of this type of infinity motion or Molinex and things like that.
Right.
Particularly because that type of sword has a fatter tip, a heavier tip, and it lends itself well to those sort of recovering motions and things. But just to have your hips behind also, it helps quite a bit.
Yeah, and the fact that it is a slashing weapon more than it is a piercing weapon, because
and you're almost slashing with your hips in that case, which is a very interesting weapon to get into. And I have a few things that I use it for, and might get into that in one of these episodes coming up, a Swords and Sabers or something like that. But the last thing I want to say about that is very fast, and then we'll do our last video very fast, is when you do that, it's easier to use more hip when you move a little slower or a little bigger, I should say. It's easier to move faster if you use a little more arm, but you still have to use your hips for both. So it's just, as you saw me move faster, it looked like my arm did more of the work. It did. Another thing is, I gave a lot of credit to Eskrima people and to a guy named Snake Blocker, who is, I believe, an Apache, who teaches a lot of the knife and tomahawk stuff that I've picked up over time, which all of that addresses, like I said, I don't teach attacks in Saresu. These could all be attacks to the wrist or elbow, very Obi-Wan, to cut somebody's arm off at the elbow. It's just super rude and Obi-Wan to do, and I'm all about it. So I often use infinity parries as elbow slashes. So just something to keep in mind as those attacks are coming in. So if you choose to do that as a velocity, where you're doing it as a partner drill, then you can absolutely do it where you're targeting the blade, you're targeting the wrist, then you're targeting the elbow or higher. So that's just something to add to that.
Also, you're when you do some of these ideas, right? So we talked about Polish Saber, we talked about rapier, we talked about tomahawk. A lot of this stuff, even Eskrima, remember that the weapons influence the martial art.
Yeah.
The weapons influence the movement. And it's up to you, the saber practitioner, to interpret those in your movements, because chances are a lot of the tomahawk movement, which is meant to be an inside attack and not, coming from a fencer's lunge, is going to have to change slightly just to make it work.
Right.
Just so everything, again, this is lightsaber. We're not talking about a specific type of sword. We're not talking about the ridiculousness that rapiers eventually got to, because they were, dueling in the streets every day, and whoever's rapier was longer had the had the advantage.
Man.
So, but we're talking about lightsaber, and in lightsaber. So if we're talking about lightsaber, right, you have to take what you know and you have to practice it with your lightsaber so many times that it becomes kind of instinct.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to let go of some stuff that doesn't work because of the length of your weapon.
Or the hilt. Yeah. Lots there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very last thing, because this actually takes us into our, and you mentioned a bunch of things that made me all hype about your segue. I don't even remember what it was now because I was so hype at the time. But this last video is called Saresu Velocity 147, and I said 2 ways. This is what I'm getting at. Those infinity parries. The other part of it is Saresu is the defense form. You're creating absolute shell of defense around yourself by doing it that second way, where everywhere you spin your blade, you're blocking, you're cutting, you're blah blah blah. They can't get to you. You've just got a constant web of light around you. So this next velocity, the two ways are a little more rudimentary, where it's defend, defend, counter, and the counter is a guard that happens to chop. So that's a key thing for anybody listening. It's a counter that happens to chop. It could also be a stab. So zone 1 gets a block. Zone 4 gets a parry or infinity parry. And then zone 7 is going to be just a guard to zone 7 that happens to cut them at the neck. So let's watch this because it kind of takes all that Suresu before and gets it right in there. It also gives you a little hint of that Makashi with the flick chopping. So 3, 2, 1, begin. And particularly with Suresu and Makashi, I mentioned other forms that these drills would be applicable to later if I felt that it was worth mentioning in the comments. So 1, 4, 7, zone 1, zone 4, zone 7. The first one is very cut and dry, and there's what I call triangular footwork, just imagining there's a triangle on the floor and trying to hit the corners. That's all that means. Some people call it box stepping, which is four corners. So, you math however you like to math.
All right.
So you see there's a block, there's a parry, and then that parry becomes the guard, and that guard is in a little bit of a retreat. And I do it at 3 speeds as well. I do it slow, medium, fast for anybody that's curious. And the second version is just with those infinity parries. To 4 and 7. The guard to 1 and 4 rather. Just developing the ability to keep the blade moving. And always, this is something I talk about with no matter which form I'm teaching, is always making that blade more dangerous to your opponent than you. So this, with the infinity parries and such, it's really just a matter of trying to keep that blade moving in a direction that's either nullifying their danger or making it more dangerous to them than you.
Right.
And this could be any 3 zones as well. So.
Yeah.
You were saying?
So, I was saying one of the cool things about this is that the camera can't seem to focus on you because you're moving.
That's exactly. I couldn't tell until after I recorded it, but I was like, you know what? I'm gonna keep it. One day I'll get a nice camera, but
it just goes to show you though, like if you are doing this and you're in a position to actually once again put yourself out there and practice on the internet and share it with others all around the world, it's one of those things that we can actually look at and go, okay, that's an interesting interpretation. Okay, now can you do it? That's the next step is literally practice.
Well, I agree 2,000%. And we're coming so tight on time now. I want to wrap it up, but I do like that. That encompasses everything we're talking about. So, I hope that people do watch. I don't know. I'm sweating saying that, but I do hope that people watch. I do hope that somebody sends us a message and says, I do this so much better, or, I do it this way, and here's a little bit of mine. With your permission, we would never share without your permission, but with your permission, we might even have you on the show to help us do a breakdown just like this. So yeah, we're interested.
Let's talk about that really quick.
I'm here.
I'm
sorry. Really, really quickly. I just want to, the credit I gave for this one is very special to me. Really, I just want to point that out because it's very special to me. I gave credit to Ed Parker, the founder of Kempo, because Suresu to me, and particularly Gemso, is Kenpo. But we'll get to that later. But also one of my Kenpo teachers, I call him Sifu Chuck, because he started in Kung Fu, and he's a 6th degree Kenpo black belt. And the footwork in particular with the strikes, he was 100% Saresu because he was a small person. He was not old, but he wasn't young. And he had to rely a lot on parrying and doing things like kicking you to the knee underneath of his very Wing Chun sort of style.
Yes.
But karate movement. And so this 147 velocity is almost exactly the way that he would defend himself in class against, when we would do like, mock sparring and stuff like that. So I just wanted to point that out. But you were saying people who send us message, let's get back to that. Send us their
I
stuff.
was going to say, I would love to get people's 2 cents about this, but only in exchange for their videos as well.
Yeah.
If you're going to tell us, hey, you're doing it wrong, please show us how to do it right.
Or maybe
that's all I ask.
Depending on proximity, send us a message. Depending on proximity, where you live compared to, come out and let's do a little sparring session. We'll go to a martial art. We'll sign a waiver so everybody's legit, and let's do a little sparring session. And it won't be like, hey, let's come kick butt. No. Like, let's just because if I'm willing to videotape me sparring you, right, then you should be willing to be videoed. And
right.
That's another option. Like, maybe you don't have stuff, but maybe you really know what you're doing. Okay, well then, or go get your iPhone, go outside, swing your broomstick around, show us, send it to us. I'm really interested, Alan, because even if you don't give us permission to show it, I'd love to be able to tell people that there are other people out there doing good stuff.
Yeah. Also, in this day and age where it's so easy to be negative about something, I would love to turn that negative into a positive and make a new friend out of whoever decides, that what we're doing isn't correct. Great. Please show us how to do it correctly.
Yeah.
Please let us be friends and do stuff in the future together, because that's how communities work.
I love that. I love it when you see like Conor McGregor and Jose Aldo, all that smack talk leading up to that fight. For anybody who's ever seen it, or if you're curious, go back and look at those press conferences, all the lead up to that. Now, almost 10 years later, right? Like, those two are giving each other flack, but it's always tongue in cheek. They support each other in their fights and things. They give each other credit for being great fighters and all that. Like, I love when you see those kinds of things. So yeah, if we have that Conor McGregor Jose Aldo moment with one of our listeners, one of our viewers here, I'm kind of into it. Go ahead and tell us what you're doing right. I'm cool with it.
Yeah. And if you'll let us, we'd love to have you at Saber Mayhem Memorial Day weekend.
Oh, what a great the Segway King today.
And let's talk about it. We're gonna have a Saber Summit. We're gonna have hopefully a big group of people that represent the biggest Saber groups in the world. I'll try to even get somebody on Zoom if that's possible. And it would be great to just have that sort of presence to be able to say, hey, this is who we are. If you're in my area, come on in. We'll get together. Here's our events. Here's the things that we'd love to do. Please reach out.
Yeah.
If you need, if you need us to shout you out, please let us know, because we have been doing this for a while, and there's so much good out there. There's a lot more good than there is bad. That's
accurate. And I feel like I perpetuate maybe the opposite of that by accident. I try not to. I do that by accident sometimes. But truthfully, there really is a whole, and that's why I gave credit at the end of my videos. I want people to know that there's good stuff out there.
Yeah, that's the big thing. We're here.
We didn't learn it from ourselves. We didn't make it up. Like, we made up the forms, but we didn't make up martial arts. Human beings made it up from their monkey selves, and that's what we're here to do.
Right. Find us on sabermartialarts.life. Get a hold of us, any of us. There's a bunch of instructors from a bunch of different parts of the United States there, and hopefully the world.
Become an affiliate. It's not hard.
Yeah.
And like just selfishly, we like having you. So
Yeah. And remember, bring your own saber.
bring your own saber.
This party's over.